Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Enhancing Substance Use Prevention, a new virtual SEL curriculum for students grades 6 through 12. Before we get started, we have just a few housekeeping items to run through. Today's presentation will be recorded, and a copy along with the slides will be sent out to all registrants. Attendees are in listen-only mode. However, if you'd like to chat with us or ask a question at any point during the presentation, you can do so on the right-hand side of your screen in the GoToWebinar control panel. Finally, we invite you to connect with us on social media by tweeting at us, Kognito, or using the hashtag KognitoWebinars. Right now, I'd like to introduce today's presenter, Sabrina Jongoff. Sabrina is a passionate advocate for mental health and is grateful to be part of a company that uses technology and conversations to improve social, emotional, and physical health outcomes. After joining the Kognito team in 2019 as a business development representative, Sabrina now oversees K-12 clients across the country as the Regional Director of K-12 Partnerships. And with that, I'll turn things over to Sabrina to get us started.
Thank you so much, Scott. Good afternoon, and thank you everyone for joining us. Today, I'm really excited to share with you our new virtual SEL curriculum for middle and high school students. This new program and the accompanying curriculum covers substance use prevention and empowers students with the critical skills they need to manage difficult real-life substance use situations. So let's jump right in. First, I want to mention Kognito. I'll assume you know a little bit about us since you found your way here today. But for those that are new to Kognito, we are a company that is driven by the idea that conversations have the power to drive positive change, especially as it relates to social, emotional, and physical health. We are a mission-driven organization, and I'm excited to share how we embed that mission in everything we do as we walk through the new simulation today. So why substance use prevention as a topic? We've focused a lot on mental and emotional wellness in the past with past programs. Several years ago, in fact, we launched our first student-facing program called Friend to Friend, which is a simulation that normalizes conversations between peers around distress and help seeking for teens in their language and conversational style. Because who are teens really going to turn to first in crisis? Their friends. But we've heard over and over from districts that it's not enough to talk about this in just one scenario. So we thought, what else is affecting teens' mental and emotional health? Issues surrounding substance use. This really is an evergreen issue. We're seeing increased attention. We're seeing more legislative mandates, more federal funds are being directed to this. And we're hearing even more discussions about substance use in teens as we continue to navigate the pandemic. COVID-19 has created a variety of mental health challenges for teenagers and adults alike. And in addition to the continual strain the pandemic is causing, it has also been a source of trauma for today's teenagers. They have lost their sense of routine and normalcy. Many have lost loved ones, and many have lost the one safe space that they had, school. Teenagers are facing greater mental health challenges than ever before, and many may turn to substances to cope. So let's hop over to the next slide. So through our simulation, students will learn how to acquire certain key SEL skills. The goal is to increase protective factors and decrease the impact of negative risk factors associated with substance use. Within this program, we decided to really focus on some of the core skills that are evidence-based and have been shown to really help students navigate these types of decisions. You'll see here goal setting and assertiveness, which is also known as refusal skills, coping skills. The help-seeking skills component is something we've incorporated for a long time as it relates to these type of topics, and really just making sure that students feel that they know how to understand their own feelings and how to seek help when they need it. Then obviously the whole idea of responsible decision-making, those critical thinking skills. But I think the real key here was setting this up so that those decision points relate back to what's important to the student, really meeting them where they are at. So we don't assume that students are coming into the simulation experience with no skills. We understand that students come in with certain skills and that it's our job to meet them where they are, continue to engage them in a way that builds up those existing skills. We worked with actual teens and subject matter experts to really see what they're thinking about, how they're processing things as they think through their decisions around substances. We wanted to make sure that in this program, we're really addressing those. This list here are the key ones that student mentioned. We're talking about misconceptions around substance use, stress and anxiety, feelings of connectedness and belonging, peer and family examples, and factors like trying new things and exerting independence. I think the misconceptions factor is huge. In fact, more students don't use substances than do use substances. That's such a huge thing because if everybody thinks that everybody is doing it, then it seems like the right thing to do. But when we have the opportunity to really talk about how actually most teens are not using substances, it's a real game changer. There are a lot of students who don't want to try substances or don't plan to try, but there are also those who are in the space where they see that as part of what they might want to do in their teenage years. So they're contemplating, okay, what might that look like to try new things? Or is this a way I can exert independence? With these considerations, I really want to underscore that we didn't make a don't program. We made a program that is, what are the things you should be thinking about? How can we help you? Then it's really going to be based on their own values, their own goals, and what decisions they want to make for themselves. I just want to bring that to the forefront before we go any further, because our amazing subject matter experts and the students that we consulted as we were designing this program were adamant that this was not a just say no program. So we made sure that the simulation reflects that and truly gives students agency. So I'm going to wrap this portion up a little bit and transition from the theory and background to the application. But first I want to talk a little bit about these protective factors and the ones that we are able to influence. So we've matched these skills to evidence-based protective factors, these SEL skills, to things like a student's ability to handle stress, positive self-concept, plans for the future. You know about risk factors, things like, being male, having divorced parents, etc. We have no control over these things. Students have no control over these things, but we can focus on acquiring some of these protective factors. But these can feel kind of abstract. So when we think of something like positive self-concept, how do we actually teach that and how can we practice that? The simulation we're going to show you provides the opportunity to have a conversation around alcohol that isn't stigmatizing, that isn't pathologizing. It really creates a safe, open space to have that conversation and to not feel like this is a punitive response or that the students are being spoken down to in any way. So let's carry right along. This is just the overall product slide. So in this simulation, we have two students. This is Dan and Ruby. As I mentioned earlier, this is an addition to our current friend-to-friend program that is focused on mental and emotional health. And what we know from historic usage of our first student program is that this format, the simulation, is more engaging. We spend a lot of time making sure that students are engaged. It's not just a click through. And when we talk about skills, the students actually get to practice those skills, which is key to creating attitudinal and behavioral changes. And excuse me, my goodness, I haven't talked this long in a while. And now my doorbell is ringing. I'm so sorry. So in everything that we do, I just want to make it clear that we make sure that we're supporting the teachers. And in everything that we produce, we want to make sure that whoever is implementing this feels fully supportive. That is massively important, especially now. The pandemic, the pivoting to online and hybrid learning, the trauma that we've all collectively experienced, there's a lot of initiative fatigue. So one of the great things about Friend to Friend is that it can be done fully online by the students with fidelity. There's also a lesson plan and discussion guide that we provide for a deeper experience. But again, we provide that so no one is spending hours on their own creating a new lesson plan from scratch. I want to also talk a little bit about outcomes. We are an outcome-based organization, so if we say we're teaching skills, then we need to actually show that we can improve outcomes, and that is just vital. So in order to do that, we have students take pre, post, and follow-up surveys. So the pre and the post are done immediately before and after the simulation, and then a follow-up survey is sent to them 60 days after completion. And that follow-up survey is key to aggregating this kind of data and seeing these measurable behavioral changes over time. These are all anonymized, but they do show an increase of student self-efficacy. And that's really just essential, because everything that we show you is only as good as the outcomes that come from it. So lastly, just kind of, as we talk about the theory and how we created this and who we worked with to create this and make this such a relevant and engaging experience, we developed this program with prevention leaders. We used to say prevention experts, but I think we all now agree that nobody's an expert and we're always learning and evolving. So it's really important to us as an organization to continue to learn new things, and that as best practices evolve and new things come out in the field, that we will pivot and respond to that and be part of the conversation and make sure that our programs match that conversation. So now we're going to jump right in and look at some of the learning objectives. I'll go over these fairly quickly, but we want to make sure that the students are able to do some of the core things that they will need for real life scenarios in the practice scenario. So understanding what is substance misuse, what support services are available, then some of those refusal skills. We really just want to make sure that they understand some of those social norms, and learn about some of these different healthy coping strategies. So as mentioned, what's really important is that they get to apply these. So here they're actually applying those communication skills within the conversation, and we're going to demo this out. They get to talk with their friend about what are some of the ways they might use those refusal skills. What are some of the types of goals or values that they might see for themselves, and how might they use that in a conversation to ultimately make some decisions. And again, this is very accessible and approachable, because this is, by students for students, and you really are just speaking to a friend. So the practice is vital, but before the students experience the practice, we have several didactics or lessons that cover these things. They cover the myths around substance use, they cover those healthy coping mechanisms, and they cover different reasons for not using substances. So Ruby, who we see here, she's going to walk the students through this whole simulation. So instead of saying you should do X, it's going to be Ruby saying, here's what I was experiencing. Here was my thought process. Here's why I refused to try a substance. So when we have Ruby talking about her own realistic background, she really slows down her decision-making process for the students. A lot of times when we hear stories of students using for the first time, it's pretty passive or reactionary, something like, hearing it was offered to me, or I just decided to go for it. There's not a lot of thought put into it. So we want to really model this conscious decision making, and Ruby helps us demonstrate that. She slows it down, she provides her own reasoning for refusing, and she provides an opportunity for the students to foster their own reason. And there are shorter activities in these little lessons before they dive into the actual practice. So that really leads us to students being able to express their own why. This is probably my favorite part of the simulation because of that agency and involvement. Students here get to identify what's important to them. It's the most critical part of decision making, knowing your why. And in addition to Ruby expressing her why, students will participate in an activity in the lesson where they think about their own whys and actually write them out to kind of complete that thought process. And through this activity and this lesson that Ruby is sharing with us, we make it really clear that there isn't one type of why, and it doesn't have to be a grade on a test or getting into a top college or some huge thing. It can be family. It can be something that's going to be really specific and personal to the student. Maybe I want to improve my jump shot so I can make the JV team, or I want to try out for the lead in the school play and I have to be ready after school for that practice. It's all valid. Any reasons are valid. So as we're working on expressing our why and identifying our goals, we also introduced the idea of growth mindset here. anytime we're setting up goals as it relates to substance use and knowing that students are already going through a lot and coping with a lot, we want to make sure that we're not setting them up for failure. There is not always a straight line to accomplishing goals. You'll see that over here. We have, our motivation and our ultimate goal. It's not going to be a straight line. There are going to be ups and downs. Some of the examples that Ruby shares are, maybe it's being healthier, focusing on yourself, spending more time outside. Or it could be a little bit bigger, like joining the track team, getting into advanced English, or joining a new club. So what could the support system look like as students are looking to achieve their goals? We actually teach that in a way that there is no wrong way to refuse. So they get to come up with their why and then practice having this conversation. What we're really hoping that they get out of this is feeling comfortable saying no and understanding that they can still say no and maintain a strong relationship with the person who is asking them something around using substances. So in order to help students feel empowered and to assert themselves in a way that feels comfortable, we actually teach this portion through text messages, and the students get to try out different texts and see the reaction. So you'll see right here we have kind of the white and blue text bubbles, and you can, you click the send again to see a different response, or you move on if you like the response and you feel like you've gotten good practice. It was really important for us that if students just wanted to say no and leave it at that, that's okay. If they wanted to say no and tie it to a larger goal and explain their why, that was also okay. So these are all modeled out. So depending on a student's comfort level and the difficulty of the situation they're in, they will have a way out. So now we're going to look at supporting a friend. So the importance of all these communication skills and pro-social skills. They're important. How do we use them? How does this resonate with students? So ultimately, we found when we were doing user testing with students, this section really resonated them because they want to support their friends and they want to know different ways to provide support. They don't want to ostracize their peers or make them feel bad. So they're very keen to learn these different tactics. So again, we're using evidence-based communication skills here. These are basically, they're phrased in a slightly different way than you might see them as an adult. So essentially, these are active listening skills. And we just say things like, frame advice as a question, which is, asking an open question, and encouraging them to do things through a conversation like staying positive, demonstrating your understanding, and again, always continuing to frame advice as questions. So now we're going to jump right in. In this conversation, like I mentioned before, we are going to play Ruby. Ruby will be talking to her friend Dan, who was invited to a party. In this simulation, Dan has never used substances before, and he's thinking through what that might look like for him. So our job as Ruby is to use the communication skills we've learned through the lessons to really listen to what our friend Dan is going through. And then we'll apply some of the other skills that we've learned around refusal skills and goal setting to help Dan as he thinks through how he may want to approach this decision at the party. So here we go. Let's dive right into the simulation. Just a warning that because we are streaming this through the webinar platform, there might be a bit of a delay, which would not be your experience if you were to do this on your own device. And we will be sending the complete demo as part of our follow-up email. So let's see how this goes.
Hello.
Hey.
Hey, thanks for talking.
Oh no. Let's see.
Hello.
There we go.
Hey, thanks for talking to me about stuff.
Dude, literally anytime.
So I'm super excited about this.
So I'm going to pause for a minute just to acknowledge a couple of things here. So first, you'll notice that the students are speaking to each other over FaceTime. If you've experienced any of our other simulations before, the student ones or the professional developed ones for teachers and staff, those have all been face-to-face. We wanted this to be FaceTime not only because it's still a pandemic and most of our interactions have been this way, but because this is a really normal way for teens to connect with each other. So again, we're starting off by making this very approachable and relatable. And this little play button, Scott, are you able to help me out and just push play?
Theater party, but
Thank you.
I'm also like pretty nervous.
So now we have a couple options. We can ask a question, we can reassure Dan. We're
Well,
gonna ask him a question.
I guess I just don't know what it'll be like.
So right here at the bottom, you're gonna see a little coaching feedback. It's good, we asked an open question. That made Dan wanna open up more. So what can we do next? Can we reassure him?
find out when you get there.
I mean, what if I get there and everyone is playing some card game that I don't know the rules to and they all think I'm uncool? Or what if they play songs I don't know and everyone is singing along but I don't know any of the words?
So with this situation, we actually brushed off Dan's concerns. So we thought that we were reassuring him, but it actually wasn't opening up the conversation for continued dialogue. So what we're going to do, which is one of my favorite features of all of our simulations, is we're going to undo this choice and try something else. So let's show understanding.
It's a new situation, so it totally makes sense that you'd be kind of nervous. But I'm down to keep talking, and hopefully I can help a bit.
Thanks, Rhubarb. Yeah, I think just talking stuff out will make me feel better. Like, what if I get there and everyone is playing some card game that I don't know the rules to and they all think I'm uncool? Or what if they play songs I don't know and everyone is singing along but I don't know any of the words?
Those things could happen, but nobody will think less of you from not knowing song lyrics. Unless they're Miss Swan, in which case they absolutely will.
So you'll see this conversation is now going in a different, more positive direction. Dan is really feeling like, hey, Ruby is here to listen, which is great because I needed someone to talk to. So let's see a little bit more how this develops and what our next conversation selection is going to be.
Teachers tend to be like that. But seriously, I think the biggest thing is just that I don't know if there's going to be alcohol there, and dealing with that whole thing. Like, I know not all parties have alcohol, most don't, but what if this one does? I haven't hung out with them outside school before, and I don't know what they're into. Like, I've never tried it before, and I don't really know if I want to or not. I guess I'm just not sure how I feel about it. Like, it's a little scary, but also maybe it could be fun.
So again, we're getting some positive encouragement. You showed your understanding. Dan is still talking. He's opening up. He's sharing these very real anxieties about there potentially being alcohol at this party. So I want to just mention a little bit of the feedback. This obviously would go on longer and would have a lot more conversation selections to make as the conversation develops. And the next steps would be kind of talking to Dan about, well, what would it be like if you did try? If you don't want to, what are some reasons that you could give that would kind of shut it down, make you feel comfortable, but still also make it okay to be there and continue having fun at the party? So as we talk about feedback, feedback is vital to all of our simulations because, again, it's providing practice to improve outcomes and to improve self-efficacy. And all of our simulations are built on gaming technology, and the student-facing ones are kind of even more gamified than our professional development sims, which really just adds to the engagement factors. So as students progress, they'll get either a gold, silver, or bronze badge as they go through, depending on how they did using open-ended questions, staying positive, and showing understanding. And we've actually seen students play through the conversations multiple times. If they didn't get the gold on the first try, they go back and try again, which again is just like modeling that consistent approach to behavior changes. So I want to make sure that we get to this last section because it's so important and it really wraps back around to so many of the things that we've discussed today. So that is the idea that there are resources available. There are trusted adults. It is okay to ask for help. If you are concerned about somebody else, it's okay to let them know that you are there to support them. The ability to ask for help, to be vulnerable, to put ourselves out there, to really let our young people know that it's okay to have challenges is so important to acknowledge and to model. We make mistakes. Learning how to figure out how to deal with problems really makes us who we are. So problems are a good thing. Mistakes are a good thing. Even failure is a good thing. What makes things better is when we can have support, whether it's from friends and family, trusted adults, or support from professionals. So really having these resources and scaffolding what asking for help looks like and what you can expect to receive from that help creates a non-judgmental space to talk about what you need to talk about it, whether it's, do I want to use substances and what for, or I've decided to use substances and I'm struggling and I need help, or I never want to try substances and how do I handle these social interactions? So help seeking is really just such a key piece that we want to make sure students have the agency around that so they know what's available and can seek out what feels right to them. In our programs for educators and staff, we're of course making sure that they're identifying students and connecting them to support. So in these student-facing sims, we want the students to really have the agency to seek out that help, which actually brings us to our last slide, which is right on time. So as mentioned, this is part of a larger program. So our Friend of Friend suite now has 3 pieces: substance use prevention, emotional and mental wellness, and the forthcoming Safe and Caring Schools, which addresses school violence prevention. We will continue to add to it, but the idea here across all 3 modules is that we're taking these SEL skills, the pieces around all of those competencies, and putting them within topics that are important, not only to students, but important for districts to cover, and making sure that the students are able to use all of those SEL skills within scenarios that they're going to experience in real life and feel confident in their ability to handle those. So we're really excited to keep adding to this, excited that this program is now available, and we're looking forward to introducing the next one in a couple of months. So we have 2 more minutes. So Scott, I'll see if we have any questions that have come in.
Hey Sabrina, so we got a couple questions here. First one is about pricing. How does pricing work for the simulation or for the suite?
Yeah, good question. You can reach out to me directly to learn about pricing for your school or your district, but typically this is a per school site cost, so it would be available to all high school students at a school site, and depending on the number of students, we can also explore individual pricing.
Great, thank you. And there's a question here about the full friend-to-friend SEL suite. Can the programs be used all at once, or do you suggest a tiered approach?
Yeah, it's definitely up to you and your school community. I like looking at it as a tier approach and being able to kind of introduce new content to students as they progress through each grade level. But depending on kind of your district's mandates and the structure of your own lesson plans, you can absolutely use it, all together or throughout a year. And you also can buy the program separately or as a suite with all 3 modules.
Okay, great. And that brings us to the half-hour mark. I want to thank everyone for joining us for this presentation. Sabrina for taking time out of her day to talk to everyone about this program. And any closing thoughts, Sabrina?
No, just want to thank everyone for joining. I know this is on everyone's mind, so we'll be following up with this, and I hope this leads to some more conversations, and that I get to learn more about your districts and your school community's needs.
Okay, great.
Awesome. Thank you, Scott. We'll talk to you guys soon. Bye-bye.